Hi, lettering friends. Heather here. Today we are going to have some fun learning how to create power words. These are exciting, eye catching words like you see in the comics or in superhero stories. Word like zoom, kapow, and in this case, wow. Power words can add energy and personality to your drawings, cards, and school projects. Here are some that I made earlier. Doesn't it look like they're just jumping off the wall? We're going to learn how to make something just like this today. But before we dive into today's lesson, what's your favorite sound or word from a superhero comic? Is it the almighty boom or the sneaky by the end of today's lesson, you can make words that pop off the page and add major flair to your work. Imagine designing a cover for your very own comic book. Let's start by putting pencil to paper and practice writing out power words. Choose a fun sound or word like bang, zoom, or wow. We'll draw them big using our pencil hack on our paper. Now, remember the pencil hack from the first series? You're going to want to have this on hand. It includes 2 pencils, a rubber band, a piece of tape, and something in between. In this case, I put a marker. And remember, notice how the marker sticks out on this side so I can still use it if I want to. And I can use the 2 pencils to draw 2 lines. That's going to be the outlines of our letters. If you want to make a wow wall like mine, I'll be showing you how to write the word wow. To draw big, we are going to need to draw outside of our zine, but you might want to have this handy just for inspiration. You're also going to want to have a few different sheets of colored paper, several sheets if you plan on writing lots of letters, or if your word has more than 3 letters, at least 2 colors of paper, a light color and a dark color. You'll also want to have your pencil hack. You'll want to have some glue for later. You'll want to have some scissors here in a minute and a black marker so you can, or a dark colored marker so you can do the outline, and another pencil just for like cleanup, maybe a pencil with an eraser, or have an eraser on hand in case you need to erase some lines. All right, let's get started. First, we're going to start with the darker colored paper. So you can take the light colored paper and put it aside. And we're going to write on this darker color paper. I'm going to put out 1 sheet at a time. We're going to work on this darker color paper because it's going to be the backdrop or the drop shadow for our letters. So first, we're going to start by writing with our hack. Remember, we hold the hack with our thumb and our forefinger, and then we let it rest, on the back of our hand. Not so tight that we squeeze our pencils together, but not so loose like you drop it, like I just did. And remember, for the lefty, it's the same thing. You're going to hold with your thumb and your forefinger, and then allow this to rest on the back of our hand. Now, if you decide you want to work on great big paper as a class, you can do that too. That's fine. And if you are working on great big paper, like the kind that covers your whole desk, you can compose your work and make some letters bounce by drawing a variety of baselines. Here, let me grab a piece of paper and show you how. Say you have a big piece of paper, it can be any color, including white. Maybe somebody over here in the corner wants to write wow, and someone over here wants to write in this corner like this. You could actually write in every single corner. Notice I'm doing like these little arcs. I find that arcs are a great way to write. You can also do things at a diagonal. So maybe after the people have written here, maybe others can come in and write at other diagonals. Looks like a straight line here, unless you turn it. So everybody can draw around a great big piece of paper. You might put down a pencil line as your baseline where your letters are going to live. And instead of a diagonal, maybe you're going to do something like this and fill up that shape so your letters start small and go bigger. You could also start bigger and go smaller if you want. And if you are on a shape like this, maybe you want some letters to be below that baseline, some above, some right on it, and then change. It's totally up to you. Let's start by making sure that we are measuring 5 widths, pencil widths, wide. I'm going to start in the middle and draw a light line here and then go up and up. And these lines should touch. And this is the smallest we want to write our letter. Remember in the first section, if we drew the letter E any smaller than that, then our crossbars would almost touch each other. So we want our first stroke to be taller, just slightly taller than all of those lines. That's going to be the height. So there's my first line for my W. You can barely see it there. My second line is going to match up down here or as close as I can get it. Remember, you pretty much want your first and your third lines to be parallel, your second and your fourth lines to be parallel. And if they don't match up down here, that's okay. I'll show you what to do to fix it. Now we want to put some end caps on our letters, but we want to make sure that they look right. So we're going to add just a slight up and to the right shape. And the reason why we do that is we want to make sure that our letters look like they're moving, and diagonals like this, even if it's a slight diagonal, will show that up and to the right movement, and it makes it look like it's going fast or it's bursting in some way. Once we get down here to this bottom, I'm going to go ahead and go up and to the right there because I'm okay if one side is shorter than the other. That's totally okay. Now, with the letter O in this case, if you remember in our very first session, we made a perfect circle. We don't have to do that with graphic letters. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple of lines up here. Oops, that's too low. Up here, because I'm going to start up here and I'm going to go all the way down here, but I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger because we tend to write our letters that are rounded smaller. And so we want to make it just a little bit bigger optically because look how wide that W is. We want to make sure our O doesn't get too wide, but it's taller. Okay, so I'm going to draw this and I'm going to try to connect this line with this line, these little marks I made down here, and then go the other way. Now you might think, oh, that looks kind of strange. The lines cross. That's okay, because now I'm going to go back with my pencil and I'm going to draw a little bit outside that area here. And since my hand likes to go in this direction, lefties, your hand likes to go in this direction, I'm going to turn my paper. And you can't do this if you're doing a big piece of paper, but you can do it if you're working on a single sheet. Okay, and now I'm going to do the same thing for the inside, but I'm going to come in just a little bit because I want this to be a little bit thicker, and I'm going to go way out and then come down a little bit. Now I'm going to come in and come way out because I'm going the opposite way, and I'm going to kind of follow that same shape. And what I'm going for here is just a slightly wider at the top, and I know I flipped it around a couple of times, so it doesn't matter which way it goes because we're going to end up cutting these out. I'm erasing all the extra lines, and I'm looking at my O and saying, do I like that shape? Does it look good with the W? Let's see. And again, you don't have to draw yours upside down. I might go a little bit thinner on the inside, maybe not as pointy on the outside, but I do like the idea of it being just a little bit top heavy. Because we're going to put so many drop shadows on it, we might end up wanting it to be a little bit bottom heavy. And remember the quote that I shared with you at the beginning, my favorite teacher says, you are the designer with the tool in your hand. So now go back to your W and erase any of those extra lines. And come back in with your pencil and draw the lines nice and big, nice and heavy. And here you're really defining the shape of the letter. So if you decided that you didn't draw it very well to begin with, no worries. Now is where you're going to fix it. Okay. Once you have the lines the way you like them, now let's cut them out. We're going to cut out the W and the O, and then we're going to use this W to trace another one so we don't have to draw it again. It's going to look great. And again, if you come in here and go, oh, I don't really like how thick this looks, no worries. You can come back and make it a little bit better. So now let's cut these out. A secret when cutting these out is you want to cut just inside the pencil line, like almost on the line. If you cut on the line, that's fine. We can go back and erase it. But if you cut just inside the line, I'm going to cut my big long lines first. If you cut just inside the line, you don't have to worry about erasing it later. But you want to cut right up to it because we want the width of that letter to be as wide as possible. Now here, I can go and cut that one, and then, oh, this is right in line with it. That worked out great. These might not be that way, so I'm going to go ahead and cut these here. Notice I'm letting my scissors get almost all the way to the end before I open them up again. That allows us to have nice straight lines when we're cutting with our scissors. I'll do that again. Notice how I open it way up at the start, and then I let most of the scissor blade do the cutting so that it's nice and straight. I'm pointing my scissors right in the direction that I want this to go. Okay, and then on the inside, inside, and inside. And if you don't like your pencil mark there, just very easily pull away when you're erasing, because otherwise, if you go like this really hard, it might rip your paper. Okay, now for the O. Seems kind of wide here. That's okay, because when we go to cut out the center of your O, in this case, we're going to leave this one, but later on we'll cut out the center. We can also decide what that width is going to be. So again, I'm cutting the inside, on the inside of my O here. Now notice that I don't let my scissor blade go out too far. I keep it open. See how I keep opening my scissors the whole time I'm cutting? It's because that'll allow me to have nice rounded edges and no flat or sharp spots. When we use our scissors, the whole blade of our scissors, we can end up having flat spots. And because this is an O, it can kind of go either way because there's no angle to it. We're going to go ahead and keep that. And let's keep that circle in there for now. Now let's draw another W, but this time we're just going to trace it. And if your neighbor, if someone in your class sitting next to you is using the same color, maybe you can get 2 W's out of this one sheet so you're not wasting any. Or maybe you're just working from scraps already, and that's okay. I love finding scrap paper to work with when I'm working on an art project. Now, we also need an exclamation point, right? So next to the W, we'll draw an exclamation point, and it'll be just a little bit, be about this size, maybe a little bit taller. And then we want a circle. And so when I think about a circle, I might start to one side or the other and just draw that. Now that looks kind of like 2 eyes next to each other, but I'm just going to use that. I was going to say draw all the way around it like this, but that seems like a great big dot for that exclamation point. So maybe just go a little bit on the inside like it's concentric. Add your angled lines up like that. And if all of these lines in here are too confusing, again, just go ahead and erase whatever lines you don't need to cut this out. And again, this might seem kind of big or too small. It's better to have it slightly bigger than smaller. Otherwise, it'll get too tiny. So let's go ahead and start by cutting out the W. And again, this is a straight line, so I'm letting most of my blade do the cutting. I'll get it right up to there till I point the blade right where I want it. Let the blade do that nice straight line. Again, we're cutting on the inside. I find it's easier to cut the ends once we have cut the full letter out. Cutting those terminals or those ends of that stroke or that line in our letter is a lot easier at the very end. Get it lined up. And it's okay if your letters aren't perfect because these are handmade. We're not machines. All right, so there is our W and our other W and our O. Don't worry about the center being cut out right just yet. Let's go ahead and cut out our exclamation point. You don't have to have an exclamation point. I just like to add it to the end because it shows more expression. Yeah, that was a little trickier cutting into that. I should have waited and cut the end of it. Okay. Let's cut out the circle. Sometimes I find it's easier if I cut it out, do like what's called a rough cut to get rid of all that extra paper. And again, when I get it up to the line that I want, and this one, I've got so many pencil marks in there, I'm not going to worry about it because this isn't a letter. It's just a dot. I'll be able to flip it over. So again, I'm going to go just on the outside of this time because I want to make sure that my dot doesn't get smaller. Remember the dot over the I or J or the dot on an exclamation point or question mark is called a tittle. Okay, so here we have it. We've got all of our letters that we need, an exclamation point, and we're ready to do our next letters. Now, this is the one that's really going to count because once we draw these on here, we're going to outline them and then cut them out. So make sure you have your pencil and your black marker and your scissors ready. But we want to make sure that we leave a bit of space because we're going to add an outline and a drop shadow, and then we're going to cut beyond that. So give yourself a little bit of space. When you draw, make sure you hold down your paper with your hand like this. You might have to move your hand around to keep it straight. Don't be in a hurry. Don't push too hard against your paper because you might end up writing on your paper. If you do, no worries, you can always erase it. But take your time on this part because you are going to trace these lines. That's why when we first drew and before we cut them out, we wanted to make sure that they were just right, just how we like them. So you can take that away. That's our W. Now let's write our O. Again, let's make sure there's plenty of space between the letters and plenty of space between the letter and the outside edge of the paper. Okay, can we eyeball this and see if we can draw it? Again, I'm okay if my letter has a little bit of extra at the top. I might bring this in just a little bit. And then erase any extra lines that I don't need. We're drawing our letters now. We're composing our letters, but we're going to get ready to outline them in just a second. So let's go ahead and draw our second W. Doesn't matter which W you use. Remember, they're both the same. We used one to trace the other. so they're going to be very much alike. Oops, we don't need the other O, but we do need the exclamation point with the lines going up and to the right and our circle, our tittle at the end. Okay, make sure you've got plenty of room around that. And I'm looking at this and it looks like this one little corner is pointing. It almost looks like an egg or an oval because the top, this side was so much thinner than the other. When I lay it down, yeah, that looks better. Okay. And I want to put it fairly close because I don't want it to end up floating away. I want to put it fairly close to my exclamation point because when I draw these, I'm going to kind of draw them so they are really close to each other. Okay. Let's go back to our first one. And using our black marker, depending on how wide you want it, I am going to use, to make this outline, the tip of the broad edge. So this tip right here, remember we point it down when we're writing Graphic Novelist? Well, I'm going to use that same broad edge and to draw, and I'm drawing right on top of that pencil line. And remember, when you do really long lines, you're going to pull towards you. So if you need to adjust your paper, if you're a lefty, you might adjust it this way and pull towards you. As a righty, you might rotate your paper, also called canting your paper. And when you draw this, you're going to exhale. So you might want to take a deep breath in and then exhale when you draw it. Because if you inhale as you draw down, you might go, and we don't want that. I'm going to draw that across so I know where to start. And yes, I'm looking at my pencil marks, but I'm also looking towards the place I'm drawing. Now, when we get to the O, there's no straight lines. So I would say, for me, what I would do is I would draw the inside first. So that way I can watch the inside as I draw the outside. So when I go to draw this from the inside, as a righty, I'm going to start over here and curve my arm around until it's no longer comfortable. For the lefty, you might start over here and curve your arm around, and you might end up having to rotate your body a little bit or rotate your paper a little bit until it's no longer comfortable. I'll tell you when it's no longer comfortable with me, when my elbow hits the side of my body. So again, nib of the marker down. I'm going to take a deep breath so I have a nice, even though it's not a straight line, it's going to be smooth. I'm going to go slower. Why do I want to go slower? Because I have more control. When I go fast, I can end up losing control, sort of like riding your bicycle. And I can't really talk when I'm making letters. You can kind of see where my lines connected. That's okay, because we can kind of cover those up in just a minute. But do your best. And if that line's too long, that's okay. Do it in shorter lines. All right, let's do our other W and our exclamation point. love lettering. Oops, I went a little off there. That's okay. I'll erase it here in a second. I love lettering because it makes me quiet, puts me in the now space. And then when I'm done, I'm in the wow space. Easier to pull your lines than push your lines. You can always wait to put your end cap on if you want. Or you can do it before, it's up to you. Okay, and then our exclamation point. If you want to put the end caps on, you can. And then draw them knowing you know where you're going. Now with the rounded one, you can do the same thing we did before and rotate your paper as you draw. Or in this case, I am going to keep my marker pointed down, but I am going to draw it all in one stroke. Okay, now we can take our eraser and erase any extra pencil lines that we might find here. That's okay. Doesn't matter how many you have because we can erase them all. Okay, now we want to put in a drop shadow. First, we have to decide where is our light source. And in this case, I'm going to put the light source up here in the right. So that means if the light shines down in this direction, then my shadows are going to be on the left and at the bottom. And this time, I'm going to take the broad side of my marker. Remember, we used the broad edge of the tip. Now I'm going to use the broad edge of the diagonal part of my marker or my wedge. Because I'm a righty, I'm going to point it this way. As a lefty, you might point it this way, whatever is most comfortable for you. And I'm going to start just a little bit lower than where it starts up here. And I'm going to follow that line, but it's going to be just the outside. So I'm not going inside of the letter at all. Do you notice how there's this nice thick line on the outside? I'm going to do the same thing here till it gets to the end, and I might use the very tip to clean that up. I'm going to do it again here. It's okay if it sticks down at the bottom because I'm going to bring it back to it here. And so remember, our light source is up here, so it needs to show up at the bottom, but also to the left. So now I'm going to put one here and here. And again, I'm moving my paper so that it's most comfortable. And if you get to the end and you don't want your marker to go on the inside, you can just stop short and then use the tip of the marker to fill in any extra space. See how that pops the letter off the page? Now, when it comes to a rounded letter, and my O is kind of tilted that way, so let's tilt it so that it's straight up and down. Now, when it comes to a rounded letter, and I'm going to use my pencil, but you don't have to. My light source is coming from here. And so my pencil, I'm going to go like that because I'm going to start it there. I'm going to go like that because I'm going to end it there. And I'm going to hold the tip of my marker out. And again, I'm following that same shape, going nice and slow till I get right here. And I might just clean that up a little bit. Just bring that around. That can stay flat, or if you want, you can smooth it out like this as well. It's up to you. So what do we do about the inside? Well, it still needs to be on this side like we did with the W, but the trick here is that if I started here, I'm going to start there on the inside, and if I stopped here, I'm going to stop here on the inside. So you see see how I made that line like this? I'm going to take my marker and go in this direction and go all the way around till it stops. So that's how we know where to put the drop shadow on a rounded letter. Now with the W, it's the same. If you notice, my W is a little bit narrow up here and it gets a little bit wide down here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start not at the exact top, but start there. I'm going to pull down and I'm going to be okay if I just do that. So I kind of corrected it there, didn't I? All right. And I'm going to come in this way, clean that up. Same here. It might not start right at the top, but I can fill that in. Now here we're going to do left. And the bottom might get a little tricky because we have this round tittle down here. So let's go ahead and just draw this one in. It's going to go all the way to the rounded part, but we can leave that here. And the same with the O. We're going to start here and we're only going to do the outside and we're going to end here. So again, holding it the same all the way around and following that around. All right. Now, we want these to really pop off the page, so we're going to need to cut them out. Now, a quick tip, and this is optional for those of you who are working on white paper, or if you decide to write on that great big paper, then all you need to do, and I'm going to cut these apart just right down the middle. All you need to do is you can now color everything in. While we're cutting, you could be coloring. So the first thing we want to do is we want to cut our straightaways, and notice I'm leaving some space around my outline, and that space is almost the width of my outline. You don't have to be exact there. But what that's called is a moat. Remember the castle? Around a castle, we have a body of water that's full of sharks that protects our castle. Well, this is just a little bit of space around our letter that protects our letter. So let's cut out our moat around our letters. Sometimes you can leave a lot of space. You want to leave some space because it's going to really help it pop off the page. And I'm just going to come in a little bit to position myself for that cut. These inside cuts are easier. When it comes to the O, again, we want to follow the same amount of moat space all the way around if we can remember what that looks like. And remember that when you cut, especially rounded letters, you're going to keep opening up your scissors so that you can keep those rounded shapes, because we let the blade do all the straight cutting, but we turn our paper and open our scissors up a lot or frequently when we're cutting rounded letters. Now with this O, we want to make sure that we cut out the center because we want our pink to show through. All right, so I am carefully going to bend this, not fold it, but bend it, sort of like a taco. And when I get it bent a little bit, I'm not totally creased, I'm going to do that. I just cut a little hole in there. Then I can flatten my letter out again, and I can slip my scissors into this space and start cutting in the inside space. Notice I'm not going all the way out to the edge yet until I feel comfortable saying, that feels pretty good. That's a pretty good distance away. It should be about equal as your outside distance. Don't cut too close because you can always cut more away, but you can't put it back. So again, you want to get as close to the same width you had on the outside. Now, I can't get my scissors way in there, but notice I keep opening them up as I cut. All right, now I'll look at it and say, you know what? Now I'll look at it and say, you know what? That looks pretty good. Okay, so we've got a W, we've got an O. Let's get our other W and exclamation point cut out. Position myself over here to cut that one. Position myself over here to cut that one. And then I can always come in and cut those angles out if I want to. I like to. I want all that space out of there because it helps define the letter. Notice I'm following the outside of the shape. I'm not going in and making those little cuts inside of there. That's okay. You don't have to make that level of detail of a cut. But you do want to get the basic shape for all of the letters. Now here, I'm going to start at the top because it's straight and it's easy and it helps cut away. It's really straight until I get here, and then now I need to go around the dot or the tittle of the exclamation point. All right, now go ahead and clear away anything that you're not using because we're going to need to get out our glue. And if your teacher wants you to put down a piece of paper before you glue so you don't get glue on your desk, go ahead and take some time to clean up your space and get it ready. Make sure that you have both W's, your O, your exclamation point. Remember, we did it so that it's all one piece. We don't need your scissors anymore. And you want the letters that you previously cut out. Your W, your O, your W. Oh, where's my exclamation point? You might have to dig around for it. And your dot should be somewhere. I mean, I don't want to get any glue on my desk. So I've got all my pieces. I'm going to push them aside. And the first thing I'm going to do is lay out my W. And what I'm doing, remember, we want to follow our drop shadow. So if our light source was coming from the upper right, then we want our W to be about there. Now that's great. And we're going to have two chances to do a W. But before I do that, I want to look at that O that I created. Remember, I created the O and it had that, I drew this here. Well, if I put this down here, you're going to see my pencil mark. So I'm just going to flip it over. That's the secret. Okay, and if I know that looks good, if I don't go too far over because I don't want a gap in there, I want it to look like that. So lay them out just so that you know that your letters are going to line up. And if you notice you have a little bit of a pencil mark there, you can always go back and erase that out. Remember, when you erase a cut piece of paper, you always pull away from the paper. Don't push back up because it'll crease it. Just want to make sure, yep, that lines up nicely. When it comes to this little dot, it's going to come down here. And then my exclamation point. Actually, it goes that way. All right, now we can get out our glue. And let's go ahead and do the O because that's going to be the hardest. We're going to lay this down, get our glue stick ready, and maybe fold this up and get an idea of where we're going to glue because we're going to glue where the yellow is. Or You might turn the yellow over and say, we're just going to glue on this side for now, because that's going to go on the paper. If you're using bottled glue, that's fine. You could use a brush to put it on, or you could just put it on and smear it around. Now I'm looking here. Just if you notice that your paper peels away because there's no glue there, just go back and put some glue there. And what's great about this glue is even if it shows up on my paper here, it'll dry clear. I'm not worried about it. So there's my O. Let's do the W. Now, if I can imagine, I could pull this up. It's going to be the right side of this stroke, this entire stroke, and part of this and all of this. So and again, if you don't put enough glue on it in the beginning, don't worry. Your paper will tell you. It'll pop off, and then you can just try it again. So I want a little bit of my pink, my backdrop color showing here to the left and the bottom, and here to the left and the bottom. I can flip it over. Does it need some glue there? Yep. Sure does. I'm just going to glue the pink paper. That feels pretty good. Here's my W. Here's my O. Feels like that feels pretty good. My next W, I learned that I need to be on the right side, the full, but not all the way to the bottom, and full. And I had to go back and glue some more at the top, so I'll go ahead and do that now since I know that it's an area that needs a lot of glue. I can look at my other W to see, does that line up pretty good? Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. And this, sometimes with my glue stick gets kind of gunky, I just roll it around. Get all the excess off the side. I can also glue this side, like on the back side, because I know that it's going to need glue there too. All right. So this is going to drop down and to the left, and then down and to the left. Wow. Wow, well done. So now you just need a backdrop. Maybe you're going to use the wall, or maybe you can put it on another color paper, whether it's another different color here. Make sure your paper's big enough, or you might even cut it out of a piece of big black poster board. And that black is really going to help it pop because you gave yourself a nice outline. You can put this right onto a backdrop. It can even be on a wall if you're using friendly tape. If you want to put your next letter, you can put it over, but I kind of like the idea of that backdrop being behind, the drop shadow being behind. So I'll put each next letter behind. If you do decide you like it, each next letter in front, just make sure you do them all that way so that it's consistent. And then the wow, you can slant it. You can just have it out if you want. There you have it. You made a wow wall. Wow, that was amazing work you did today. How powerful do you feel right now? You've just learned how to make power words that pop off the page, or in this case, pop off the wall. Whether you're making comics, posters, or school projects, you can now add some superhero flair to everything you create. Thanks for lettering with me today, and I can't wait to see what you create. Keep practicing and have fun being creative.